Hello, I'm Bruce Zimmerman, and this is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week. Recently, I went and was given a tour of Henry Park at of the Royal Botanical Gardens in Hamilton. Now, it has been many years since I was there. Most of the time that I spent at the Royal Botanical Gardens was being a horticultural consultant for the Hobby Garden television program, where we were filming different areas and different scenarios throughout the botanical gardens. One of the nice things about it was that you did get to see an awful lot and some of the things that were in behind the normal day-to-day operations. But the nicest thing I saw recently was all the changes. Now, yes, we filmed all the openings and closings for the Hobby Garden in the Mediterranean house up on the second level. It was very, very pretty. And of course, a nice neutral background. So we did a lot of filming in there. Now, as I look down today, that same old fig tree is still there. So are the koi ponds and many of the plant material. But there are some new ones in there, and the cactus collection has definitely grown from those days. As you go out, you go through a whole new greenhouse section with a living wall. Now, the living walls are something that is really, really effective in cooling and adding humidity and, of course, cleansing the air. So we had a lot of fun talking about the living walls. They had nice little Ericaria bidwilli in the corner. People are going, okay. Yes, it's a relation of Ericaria, the monkey puzzle, but it's not the same. It's a close relative. Let's just call it a sister plant. So, it's going to get 100 feet tall if it ever gets that old as well, just like Ericaria. Now, when you eventually get out into the gardens, you go through a long tunnelway. Now, that tunnelway was at one time open, and you had to get there by going up and down a lot of stairs. What they've done is they've made it more wheelchair accessible and just more accessible for people who may have mobility problems. There are elevators as well. And the cooling effect of that tunnel is incredible. Even on a cool day, you will feel the coolness as you walk into it. So it's like a beautiful little transition zone before you get into the air conditioning. And, of course, it's a tunnel. And I think rather nice, with some nice plant material in containers all the way along. It looks out on to the Grand Allée. Now, the Grand Allée changes each year with different types of plants down the middle, but the walls and the hanging over the edge have always changed. Now, with that, there is a lot of plant material that are in bloom and picked for their color contrast as well. So not only just a plant that's in bloom, but very, very texture contrast. We saw Nepetia in bloom. We looked down at the ponds. Now, the reflecting ponds have a lot of water plants in them, but not too many, so that you see the water. The reason that they reflect so well is that the water is dyed black. Now, when you dye the water black, it makes it more reflective, so you can see the tea house and all the trees and the surrounding gardens reflected in the water. Always effective and great for weddings. The tea house sits down there as the focal point of the alley, just like it always has. It's been revamped, etc. The gardens have been changed. The rose garden is being reworked. Again, a really tough winter for roses as well as many other plant material. And the RBG has certainly experienced the same thing that we have done. Well, it doesn't matter whether you're in Zone 7A in Niagara-on-the-Lake, or you're in Oshawa at Zone 5, or even 4A. So, as a result, they have to work around some of the plant material. Plant material that has never died before. Roses that have survived are the roses that will be kept. Now, with each successive generation or year, what you'll find is that these are the tough roses that we want to plant into our gardens. A couple of the ones, or at least the one that I was very impressed with that came through so well, was Europeana. Now, Europeana is an old dark red floribunda rose, small, petite, and very, very neat in its habit. Disease resistant and obviously very hardy. There's a beautiful garden to the left that is basically the lily garden, where it displays lilies with other perennials in islands as well as a walkway through. So it gives depth perception as well as a walking place to a very large oak where you can sit under and enjoy the garden. The trellis system for the displaying all of the vines that have been there, and it has been there for I don't know how many years, has been reworked and revamped because obviously a wooden arbor does break down after a while, but the plant material is still there. The great challenge they had was to untwine all the grapevines that have been there so long, rebuild, and still attach these vines. Always well done. There's a nature garden where native plant material from the area within 100 miles is actually growing there. Now, as you walk through it, you're going to go, boy, this is a whole bunch of weeds. To a lot of people, these native plants are weeds, and some of them we would definitely never want to have in our gardens. There's some of the vetch that are what some people would call bindweed. It's not. It's a bird vetch. And then there are many other endangered species in there as well. Won't tell you which ones because there's people there who just might want to try and steal it. The thing is that these plants sit on the edge of a very natural pond. And the artist is making natural bird nests, which will be displayed in these trees that are dead, standing on a platform, so vertically, and then these nests will be woven into the branches, and the whole thing will be floated out into the center of the water pond. The biggest challenge they have there was that people keep putting in non-native fish. So very often goldfish and koi and other things get dumped in there when no one's looking. Very bad for the native fish that are supposed to be living there, including this big old snapping turtle that we saw out there sunning itself right on the deck, sitting right by the chair waiting. I'm not too sure what he was waiting for, but he obviously was holding court, and people were avoiding him and going around and, of course, taking pictures. I think he was just a show-off, to be honest with you. There were other artists in the garden, and there was one that was doing some wooden sculptures that were to die for. I would have loved to have any one of these sculptures in my garden, and of course they will be worked into that garden as well. This is all just within short walking distance of the RBG Center. Now, the nice thing about that when you arrive in the parking lot was that they used a lot of cactus as bedding plants in the sort of islands between the parking spaces as you drive in. Kind of cool in the fact that we're not used to seeing cactus, and we're not talking about hardy cactus, we're talking about non-hardy cactus as bedding plants. And of course portulaca, which is the flowering portulaca, not the weed one, growing in between. Very low maintenance, very colorful, and very, very artistically distinct. They're so, let's say, vertical in the cactus, with the creeping portulaca as a ground cover, and in full bloom almost always of all different colors under the sun, and very, very pretty. So not a bad way of greeting you as a potential customer. Now, you go in, you pay your way, you look at the gardens, you look at the gift shop, but you can walk through. There's a children's garden in there, and very, very pretty. So a lot of the things do need a little bit of extra tender care, so particularly because of the very tough winter that we have had. I saw a pine, like Mugo pine, hardiness zone 2, 3, somewhere in there. For some reason or other, it died, but the one next to it didn't. And trust me, that is typical of what many of us have experienced this winter. So a lot of challenges. Now, we know the rock garden is going to be reworked and has been reworked, so you can't get into that. And that will be opening up next year. Now, the other garden that has just been renovated, the peony and Irish garden, these two have been so heavily renovated that if you go and look at them, they don't look as impressive as you want, because, let's be honest, no plant after it's been divided right away is going to look that good. But they have done and redone the beds so that it's in a progression of when the plant was bred and brought out onto the market, so that you can see the older varieties, right, and it progresses to the newer varieties, which is a kind of nice thing. It's not a color, we're going to put all the pink in this bed and all the white over here and the dark crimson over here, or we're not going to put all the iris there. We're going to do them in the years that they were produced and available to the public. So you can see the old, you can see the new, and know exactly where you stand. I know that many years ago when we were filming in the hobby garden, we had a little wildlife adventure with a groundhog, and he showed up just to see who is invading his space. Hopefully you'll get to see him too someday. He's an invasive little species because he does cause some problems with the banks, but he seems to have survived, and so has the garden. Now, the other thing that we saw in there was they were renovating the garden at that time, because it was quite a few years ago. I got one of the dwarf irises that is still going well in my garden to this day. That means that clump of iris, a dwarf iris, rhizomus, not bulbous, and it's still going 20, well, we'll say it's about 22 years later. It's still doing really well in my garden. I also haven't divided it either. So now there's a variety that I can live with as well. So if you want to go and take a look and see, that's what you're going to see when you go to the Royal Botanical Gardens. So it's well worth the trip, and never mind the walk along the woodland garden trails, etc. Now, there is other places, because there's Coates Paradise and a lot of other areas that you're going to have to drive to, etc., that a walk would be too long. So when you're in the RBG Center, please make sure you do get a map. You will need it in order to find the scented garden, the Narcissus collection, because you could be there in May, in the spring. There's a Metasequoia Grove. Hey, I love Metasequoias. Recently, last year, fell out of my Metasequoia while pruning it, and let's just say it was a painful experience. There is a tree street tree display as well. So many other different areas of the garden that you don't think about, don't know are there, including the veggie village, the lily collection we talked about, the climbing plants we talked about, and many others. So well worth it. Take it in, enjoy it with your family, take it as a long, comfortable walk. So comfortable shoes, I would say I would make sure that you have something for mosquitoes and also a lunch and lots of water. You got to keep hydrated when you're doing a lot of walking, but it's definitely worth it. And we haven't even talked about the Arboretum and the lilac collection as well. I hear the lilac collection is always being revamped and new varieties put in, and that is always a good thing. You imagine that in full bloom in May? Oh, the scent would probably knock you over. But it gives you a good idea of the difference of the different types and colors of the lilacs, as well as size. I've always been a fan of Persian lilacs, but they do get a little big. The dwarf Korean ones are fabulous, and there are some other nice dwarf ones that they make into standards that you can have in your garden. And they're all there, so take them in and have a good time at the Royal Botanical Gardens in Hamilton, just off Highway 6. Easy to find, follow the signs, get a map, maybe even use GPS. Oh, okay, for those of you who are modern. So, if you'd like some more information, you could actually call and go 1-800-694-4769. That's 1-800-694-GROW. Or you can email grow@rbg.ca as well. And if you live within a decent drive of this, become a member so that you can go in and enjoy the nature trails and sanctuaries on a regular basis. Don't forget the guided tours and the demonstrations and the year-round events that are held throughout the whole gardens. This has been the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week.